Martinsville Speedway on March 29, 2026, was supposed to be Bubba Wallace's race. This is his track, the paperclip, the place where he has built a reputation, won Truck Series races, and spoken openly about feeling at home. The Cookout 400 was circled on his calendar as an opportunity to build on what had been a genuinely strong start to the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. Instead, what unfolded on lap 324 became the most discussed and debated moment in NASCAR this year, a sequence of events that drew a response from Richard Petty himself, the king of NASCAR, within 24 hours of the checkered flag dropping. Before getting into the wreck, it is important to understand just how much was at stake for Wallace heading into Martinsville. The 2026 season had treated him well. He posted 4 finishes of 11th or better in his first 5 races. He sat as high as second in the Cup Series standings at one point during the early stretch of the season. Heading into Martinsville, he was sitting third in points, a position that had genuine championship conversation surrounding it. Analysts, fans, and people inside the garage were starting to ask out loud whether 2026 could finally be Wallace's breakthrough year, the season where everything came together. Martinsville, his strongest track, was supposed to be the exclamation point on that early momentum. Then there was a second layer of pressure that was simmering quietly in the background, one that Kyle Petty would later identify as the real fuse. Tyler Reic had been doing something in 2026 that NASCAR had simply never seen before. He became the first driver in NASCAR history to win the first 3 Cup Series races of a season. By the time Martinsville arrived, Reic had 4 wins in the first 6 races, a level of dominance that had no modern precedent. He was Wallace's teammate. Same building. Same organization. Week after week, Reic was making history from the seat right next to Wallace's, while Wallace was grinding for top 15 finishes and watching someone else become the story of the season. That dynamic did not explode at Martinsville on its own. But it was burning slowly, and what Carson Hosavar did on lap 323 gave that fire exactly the oxygen it needed. Now, Hosavar deserves a fair accounting here, because the NASCAR community was quick to pile on him in the immediate aftermath. The 23-year-old driving the number 77 Spire Motorsports Chevrolet, a driver who has earned the nickname Hurricane Hosavar for his aggressive style, has been a lightning rod for controversy throughout his young career. That reputation made him an easy target when the wreck happened. But the facts of lap 323 do not support blaming Hosavar for what came next. On the restart heading into turn 1, Hosavar went 3 wide underneath Wallace, made minor contact on entry, and then cleared Wallace cleanly coming out of turn 2. It was an aggressive move. It was hard short track racing. It was exactly the kind of move that Martinsville Speedway has rewarded and celebrated for decades. Kyle Petty addressed this directly in his post-race analysis, making the point clearly: taking someone 3 wide at Martinsville is not cause for what followed on lap 324. What happened on lap 324 was not a misjudgment in the traditional sense of that word. Wallace tucked up behind Hosavar's bumper coming into turn 3. The first contact came, a deliberate shove. Then came a second push through the corner. The hits continued as the cars moved through turns 3 and 4, not once, not twice, but across multiple points of contact in a single sequence. Hosavar's car snapped around on the front stretch on the exit of turn 4, and there was nowhere for the field behind them to go. 12 cars ended up in the wall: Daniel Suarez, Chris Beiser, Austin Dillon, Austin Hill, Zane Smith, John Hunter Nemechek, Eric Jones, Michael McDowell, Connor Zilisch, Riley Herst, and among them, Wallace's own 2311 racing teammate. His own teammate was in that wall. Kevin Harvick, watching from the Fox Sports broadcast booth, said it live on air without hesitation: this was not a racing incident. This was emotional. Wallace's explanation after the race was that he had misjudged the corner. But that explanation runs directly into what the replay shows. A single misjudgment produces a single moment of contact. What the cameras captured was a sequence, multiple contacts, across multiple corners, sustained over the course of a straight and 2 turns. That is not a driver who miscalculated his braking point. That is a driver who made a decision in the heat of the moment and followed through on it. Richard Petty was at Martinsville Speedway in person on race day. He did not watch this on a television monitor in a studio somewhere. He was there, in the building, watching it happen in real time. The following morning, on the Petty Race Recap podcast, he sat down and said what he saw. His co-host Dale Inman attempted to soften the description, suggesting that Wallace had simply, kind of gotten into Hosavar. Petty's response left no room for interpretation. He drove on in there and knocked the door out of him. That quote, from that voice, is not something that can be brushed aside or buried in the noise of social media debate. Richard Petty has over 1,000 career starts and 7 championships. He has been part of this sport longer than most of its current fan base has been alive. He is not someone who operates in hot takes or speculates carelessly about what he sees on a racetrack. He processed what happened overnight and then went on record with a direct, named assessment of Bubba Wallace's actions. When the king of NASCAR tells the world that you knocked the door out of somebody, that statement carries a weight that no broadcast analyst or Twitter argument can approach. The conversation, at that level, is effectively over. Kyle Petty's analysis, delivered on the Inside the Race podcast, added the most psychologically layered dimension of the entire post-race news cycle. Kyle acknowledged the surface frustration. Wallace was already having a difficult day before Hosavar made the 3-wide move on lap 323. But he introduced a concept that reframed the entire conversation: double frustration. The first layer was the on-track frustration of a rough afternoon at a track Wallace knows well. The second and more significant layer was the compounding internal pressure of watching Tyler Reic make NASCAR history from the seat next to him, week after week, while Wallace fought for relevance in the standings. Kyle's argument was that drivers race their teammates. They want to be the fastest driver in their own building. When your teammate is doing something no driver has ever done before in the history of the sport, that pressure does not go away between Sundays. It builds. And Kyle's position was that Hosavar's aggressive move on lap 323 did not light a short fuse. It lit a fuse that had been burning for weeks inside the 2311 racing garage. Kyle Petty also did something that deserves recognition on its own. He publicly defended Carson Hosavar. With Hosavar's reputation as an aggressive driver working against him in the court of public opinion, Kyle stepped forward and said clearly that Hosavar did not have what happened coming to him. He made a legal, hard racing move, and he ended up in the wall because of what came next. The voice from inside Wallace's own camp was the one that cut deepest. Freddie Kraft, Wallace's spotter, appeared on the Door Bumper Clear podcast and chose honesty over spin. Kraft said he accepted Wallace's explanation that it was a misjudgment, but he refused to minimize what that misjudgment cost. He laid out the championship math in precise, unsentimental terms. Wallace went from third in points heading into Martinsville to effectively tied for 8th, a tiebreaker situation that placed him functionally 11th in the standings. Then Kraft used the word that defined the post-race story from inside the team: self-inflicted. Not a blown tire. Not a mechanical failure. Not a competitor taking him out unfairly. A choice, or a misjudgment, depending on whose account you accept, that ended Wallace's race, cratered his position in the championship picture, and put his own teammate into the wall in the process. Kraft's willingness to say that publicly, on behalf of a team that had real championship aspirations entering Martinsville, was one of the more honest and admirable moments of the entire post-race cycle. Hosavar, for his part, did not fold after being collected by Wallace and ending up in the wall on the front stretch. His car was partially rebuilt mid-race. He worked his way back through the field and crossed the line in 17th place, matching his personal best result at Martinsville. Meanwhile, Bob Pockrass put the points math on the table in black and white. Wallace finished the race with 1 championship point. Hosavar finished with 20. A 19-point swing between two drivers whose day started with Wallace hitting Hosavar from behind repeatedly across multiple corners. Under the current NASCAR points format, there is no mechanism to shortcut that kind of damage. Every finish in every race contributes to the standings, and a 19-point single-race swing requires multiple strong weekends to recover from. Wallace is now heading to Bristol Motor Speedway on April 12 for the Food City 500, carrying the weight of back-to-back DNFs and a controversy that followed him out of Martinsville and into every NASCAR conversation of the week that followed. Wallace himself captured where things stand. He acknowledged winning on Saturday in practice and not delivering on Sunday. The speed inside the number 23 car is not the issue. It is the execution, and more specifically, the decision-making under pressure, that is breaking down at critical moments. Bristol Motor Speedway is not a forgiving venue for a driver trying to mentally reset. It is another short track. Emotions run high there. Mistakes cost positions and points in a way that longer tracks do not punish as severely. Wallace arrives there sitting effectively 11th in a standings that had him 3rd just 1 week ago, and the entire sport will be watching to see whether he can separate what happened at Martinsville from what needs to happen at Bristol. Martinsville Speedway was supposed to be Bubba Wallace's best weekend of the 2026 season. Richard Petty saw what happened. Freddie Kraft named it. Kyle Petty explained the psychology behind it. And Carson Hosavar, the driver who ended up in the wall through no fault of his own, outscored Wallace by 19 points on a day that was supposed to go the other way entirely. If this breakdown gave you a complete picture of what actually went down at Martinsville, hit that like button. It helps this channel more than you know. And if you want NASCAR news, real analysis, and honest breakdowns every single week without the noise, subscribe to NASCAR Nation Report. We will see you at Bristol.